The views and opinions expressed on this show are those of its host and owners and in no way represent the views of the people, institutions, or organizations that Scenic City Sports is involved with in a professional or personal capacity. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
My life upon the road, I'm still looking for some gold at the end of my rainbow. Yes, someday I will find her on a Parkway Blue Blinder. On a Parkway Blue Blinder. Someday I will find her. Yes, someday I will find her on a Parkway. Like confetti in a New York parade on the Parkway, on an autumn day. Yes, the leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade. Circles in a square. Yes, and someday I will find her on a Parkway Blue Blinder. On a Parkway Blue Blinder. Someday I will find her. Yes, and someday I will find her on a Parkway Blue Blinder. On a Parkway Blue Blinder. On a Parkway.
And welcome, everybody, to the Scenic City Sports Podcast, coming to you live on July the 14th, 2022. Rusty, Scott, and Rob trying you guys out this week with a little bit of a new format. We've just decided that podcasting is kind of all the rage out there in television and media land, and the versatility of it, the ease of it for all you folks out there that can just pick your phone up at any time, find that particular podcast service, listen to it while you're driving down the road, and we figured, you know what, why don't we just jump on board that? So tonight we're kind of trying that out a little bit to see how it goes.
You're telling me that we're highway bound.
We are
people going down the interstate might get lucky and find our.
We could be riding in a big truck right now.
Oh.
We could be.
Where you at? What you hollering?
That's right. I mean, we could come on back now. Talk to Teddy Bear. I mean, we could be out there in a big truck right now, and that right there that's awesome.
Well, you know what? That's been one of our goals for most of our lives,
right,
to get in a big truck.
Hey, but this is a
cop's taking a 10-100.
This is a much friendlier medium for us and for what we do. I mean, this will allow us in a lot of ways on Friday nights, if we wanted to, we could just set up at a game when the game is over with and knock out a wrap-up show if we wanted to. And that brings up the second point, too, and that is, as we get into football season, and we're not going to make this change for probably another 2 or 3 weeks, but as we get closer to football season, we're going back old school. We're going to go back to the old way, and that is when the football games are over with on Friday night, we'll be going live. Now, I can't guarantee you that we're going live at 10:30, 10:15, 11:30, 11:05. I mean, somewhere in that range, right after those ball games, as soon as one of us can get back to the studio, we'll be the one that goes on live and starts, and everybody else drifts their way in as the night goes on. We'll be bringing in, we're working on right now, we put an open call out. We've already had some folks that have basically given us the okay that they would like to come on and help us out. And if you're out there in the sounds of our voice and might be interested in joining Team Scenic City Sports, we'd be interested in having you. I mean, I will tell you right now, these are voluntary positions. Everybody that works on this staff are all professionals in some other field besides sports media. But if you're interested in being part of the team, I mean, we definitely can get you some swag and stuff, t-shirts, hats, things of that sort. You're getting all the games for free. A lot of the places that we go, when they see our logo, it's not out of the question to get free hot dogs or a Coke or something like that. So we are treated very well in the Chattanooga, North Georgia area. So if you're interested in being a part of that, you can reach me at 423-488-4478, or you can reach Scott at 423-595-0096. Man, I had to think about that for a minute. It's been a long time since I've actually had to recite a number. But you can get in touch with us, and we're more than willing to talk to you about coming on board with us, because it's a lot of fun.
Well, we're pumped about the football season, Scott, and I know they just come back out of the dead period, 7-on-7s, kind of hitched up this week.
Yeah, a lot of 7-on-7s, and it kind of got started at the end of June. I saw a couple here and there. I know there was one tonight, I think at Walker Valley, that had Walker Valley, Ooltewah, Baylor, and LFO that I know of. There might have been some more teams there. This past Tuesday, I was down at Lafayette watching them in Gordon Central. Today at Heritage, saw 9 different teams for about an hour, so I didn't get to spend too much time over there because I had a couple of things I had to do today. But Heritage, Lafayette, Gordon Lee, Chattanooga Central, Bradley Central, Saudi Daisy, East Ridge, McCallie, and Silverdale.
And there is a couple of fields over there, the main varsity field and the practice field right next to it.
They were playing 2 games going on the main field, and 2 games on that practice field behind the stadium on the.
And I know it's early, but did you anybody jump at you of what they might have?
I mean, I think Bradley's got a little speed. I think people have talked about that before. Silverdale, I was impressed with. I didn't get to see him that much, but I was impressed with what Silverdale was doing today. I thought East Ridge didn't look too bad. Gordon Lee looked pretty good against Saudi Daisy for the time I saw him. I don't think anybody looked bad today.
Mm-hmm.
Some teams looked a little bit rusty. Heritage looked a little bit rusty, and I heard one of the coaches say, this is their first time really out here doing this. So, they were a little bit rusty about it, but look, they're going to have a pretty good team with a good offense that's going to throw it, and they can run the ball, and they got some good players back. McCallie, I'll just tell you right now, if you beat McCallie, you deserve to be. They are the favorites until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and you may have witnessed the young man that's coming down from, my sources say, from Canada to play quarterback for them. You may have seen him. He may not be here for all I know. I don't know yet.
Right.
But I understand that they were having and they have found a source out of north of the border that it's not just players. It's really good players.
Yes.
Well, as they would say on Letterkenny, they're going up there to Quebec. Good fishing in Quebec.
Is that right?
That's what they say on Letterkenny. Good fishing in the upcountry.
But I'll tell you, I saw some athletes out there for McCallie that were.
Well, let me.
I mean, and of course, we're not wearing pads, only wearing helmets and stuff. But the tight-fitted sleeveless shirts and. Well, man, they got some impressive.
Well, some big boys.
Yes.
Again, some of the beef didn't even show up to that. They graduated, Scott, an amazing group of kids last year. And I said to myself that is going to be hard to replace. Mm-hmm. But if anybody has proven that they can replace when you've gone back to back to back, each one of those state championship teams has lost quality seniors and just reloaded. Now, last year's bunch, I actually think was the best of the 3 state championship teams, and they probably lost 15 seniors that were very, very important to that team. Mm-hmm. But I did not disbelieve that they couldn't go find some kids that could help them again.
No, when you've got a program rolling like McCallie's got a program rolling right now, winning state titles, getting players from different places.
Quebec, he said.
Yeah, from Quebec. And they know that
got to watch out for them for those D-gens from upcountry.
They got any 7-Elevens in Quebec?
I don't think they have any 7. Well, they may have. They got some Tim Hortons up there, absolutely,
Hortons.
And they got some Wawas up that way too. I'm almost certain. So
okay. Wawas.
You find those right around the Mason-Dixon line once you're above. Yeah.
Too.
If you can buy a 48 or 64 ounce Slurpee, then you're in a pretty good place.
Yeah. Thanks, Skippy.
But you look at McCallie, and I mean, they come down here and they see the facilities and they see the championships and everything else at the school, and I'm sure they probably contacted their friends like, hey, you ought to consider coming down here, and it's just a football factory right now.
Well, it is, and Scott, it's one thing to get a handful of kids. It's another thing to get a handful of kids that are really good.
Yeah.
And that's what they keep finding. They're finding kids that come down there that can play college football.
Yeah. I was talking to one of the coaches from Heritage, not a football coach, a different coach who was there, and we were sitting there watching. He's like, that's a big old boy. He's the first one to come through the handshake line. And then I was like, yeah, look what's coming back behind him.
So's that one.
And
that one there.
And that one.
Yeah.
And that one. And I'm like,
I was in the early,
they're going to be good.
In the mid-spring, I was out at a Saturday track meet there that Steve Wade had called me wanting to see his young lady that's now nationally ranked #1 thrower in the country just as a junior. But I noticed some of the McCallie athletes roaming around, recognized them as football players too. And one thing that I noticed about some of those kids, it looked like some of them had grown 4 or 5 inches and put on 20 pounds just from I saw them last fall.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it a bit. So,
well, and it's not hard. I mean, let's be honest. If you're McCallie, it's not hard to get people to come to school there. I mean, if you can show and convince them what we all know that are from this area, that if you've got McCallie on your resume as the high school that you went to, it doesn't really matter where you go to college. I mean, you could go to a community college, and when they see that McCallie on there, they're like, oh, whoa, you went to McCallie, because they know not only the prestige that goes along with that, but a lot of times they know the connections that goes along with being a McCallie graduate.
Yeah.
But there's other programs I'm just as interested in this year, Scott. We got new coaching at Baylor. We got new coaching at Boyd Buchanan, and we know that's the winningest coach in the history of the state of Tennessee over there. So there's some new blood into the area. CCS
with Ridge. We talked about Polk County last week. He's not really a new face, but with Coach Davis coming back.
But that was their success person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in North Georgia, Craig Pritchett at Ridgeland coming back, and then Mac Bryan at LFO. So there's there's a lot of new coaching faces, and you mentioned Boyd Buchanan. They're having a big 7-on-7 Saturday from 10 to 2. It's called the Football Wars, or
and I
something
guarantee
like
you that he ain't going to show you anything.
Probably not, but I mean, they've got. I saw something because our Murchie High School is coming up here from the Rome area. I saw Cannon County. I saw Boaz, Alabama.
Oh wow.
Pebblebrook down in Atlanta. I mean, they're bringing in.
He's reached out.
Yeah,
but I will say that
100 miles worth of.
I will say this in my past of watching him coach a premier state championship team, which basically is every year. More times than not, what that team had up there was a stout offensive line and a running back that they just beat on you. I did not see them most of the time throw it around.
Yeah.
But they came at you physically,
yes,
and they beat you up.
Yeah.
Didn't they run the triple option a lot?
Not
the veer?
Not as much when I've seen them. They whoever their offensive line coach was, through the years of me watching them, I was always impressed with what I was watching that offensive line do. They would come off the ball and they'd get those hands up underneath those pads and they would walk your defensive line back 4 or 5 yards
wherever they wanted them.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
That's how. And when you can play like that,
you ain't got to do much.
I remember the first time we went up there and watched Meigs County in the state championship game. That's what that team played like.
Mm-hmm.
Now Meigs was a lot like that too, but they ran into somebody that was their style.
Yeah, and I'll say this: there's another team I've seen video on them this year. Dale Dowden, friend of the show, has been posting a lot of stuff on his site, and he's tied in with Sports Illustrated. Calhoun is about loaded.
Well,
I got to tell y'all
before you're trying to tell us something new that we just like.
I'm talking. I believe their tight end's already been offered by Ohio State. They got running backs, receivers, quarterbacks. They're going to have 3-4 stars at about 3 or 4
and we know that they're good year in year out. But last year, let me just say this, and they went on to get better. But in that early game with McCallie, the year before down at Finley, Calhoun led, but started making some turnovers, and McCallie ended up just having their way with them in the fourth quarter. Last year's game could have been so much uglier on the scoreboard, but there was so many penalties being called that night. A lot of them I felt like was against McCallie that got them out of rhythm, but they was and Calhoun went on to have a good year, didn't they, Scott? Didn't they go Final Four?
I
think they were Final Four.
They might have made it to the.
Might have been even in the finals.
Yeah,
they may have, but that night the difference in McCallie and Calhoun could have easily been 40 points. That's how much difference they could have been.
Well, real quick, funny Calhoun story, and I don't think it was you that shared this with me, Scott, because I was at the district swim meet 2 or 3 years ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, sorry, and we got to talking about Calhoun swim team, this, that, and the other, and it was brought up that one year the Calhoun football players, right after football season was over with, the Calhoun football players, Coach Lamb got them to swim. So a lot of the Calhoun football players swam on the Calhoun football team, and the people were telling me that you'd go down there and you got these relay teams, and the 4 members of the relay teams are 4 offensive linemen from Calhoun High School, and they're like 6'5", 230 each, 240 each out there swimming relays. They
interesting, different.
They're like, but them guys could go, man.
I was just looking at their schedule. Blessed Trinity at Gardendale, Alabama, at Creekview, but circle the calendar. September 9th at Phil Reeves Stadium, the Cedartown Bulldogs are coming to play Calhoun, and Cedartown might be the number 1 preseason team in 4A.
And you've heard me say this before, and this does not necessarily always apply, unfortunately, to North 27, but when you get down, you start running down 27, typically, and I'm talking about historically, past Lafayette, how strong is is high school football, Scott. Been down that 27 corridor when we're talking about past Lafayette. You start with Tryon, but then you just
Chattooga.
move. And Chattooga's on the light side of it.
I was
going to
say, but I mean,
down there into LaGrange,
And
Rome.
probably Chattooga's best player apparently is transferred to Rome. Rome might. I wouldn't even say they're a dark horse. I think they're a legit candidate to win the championship in that class.
They've won it before. I mean, they're no strangers to winning state championships under that coach.
They got a veteran quarterback, and they've had, like I said, at least one transfer that I know of, and they have been building down there, and they've got some big time prospects and a really good team in 6A.
And we know our old friend Coach Tucker's down there coaching baseball in Rome. But again, that's been a football town forever and a day.
Yeah,
forever and a day, and that goes back to the Sid Fritzes of the world, and who was before him, Scott? That was a well-known coach, Humphreys.
Yeah, Humphreys.
And just so on.
Well, God, it goes back to the days of West Rome. When they won four state titles in a row and went like almost the entire year without being scored on. I mean, some of those West Rome teams were some of the best ever.
Just
played.
A town that really magically has football players in town.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why Georgia athletes are one of the most sought after in all of college football. I mean, you look around the nation and you see
they're top 4 in state recruiting.
2 or 3 state recruiting. Georgia's always up there, with Texas and California and Virginia. I mean,
I think it's
Pennsylvania.
Well, Florida,
yeah.
Florida, Ohio.
Yeah,
but Georgia's
come up.
Georgia's right there.
Yeah, and that goes certainly, Scott, for baseball as well. We know what kind of baseball talent comes out of the state of Georgia.
They're probably going to have the number 1 draft pick overall.
Andrew Jones' son?
Possibly.
Who's he play for?
Yes.
So let's go back real quick.
I believe it's Buford.
Yeah.
Buford,
While we're talking,
let me confirm that, but I believe it's
while
Buford.
we're talking football, I saw the report that came out this weekend, and it was basically that ACC powers.
He goes to Wesleyan. I thought that was my other guess. He goes to Wesleyan. It's in Norcross, somewhere. It's somewhere around Atlanta.
But anyways, the report that I saw was there
Buford's got some kids that are going to be drafted.
There are ACC powers that are considering a move or even an invitation. I think, Scott, you were the one that posted it on our site, but there was even an invitation by the SEC to bring in Florida State, Clemson,
that was a
Virginia.
Report. I haven't heard anything else about it since then, but it was Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia.
Yeah.
And I reached out to somebody I know at Virginia Tech that really felt like North Carolina and Virginia would not come to the SEC, and I asked them, well, what makes you think that? I said, the money's on the SEC side. If they can run off and they forget about the so-called rivalry with Duke, they're going to come for the money. They'll still play Duke.
I was going to say they don't. Yeah, but
they'll still play them.
I mean, you think about it. If you're those two schools coming to the SEC just in basketball, in the SEC, you're not necessarily worried about. I mean, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee.
Well, those two schools can more than hold their own in the conference.
Right. That's what I'm. Oh, they would.
They'd more than hold their own.
Yeah, they would more than hold their own in the conference.
Right now, from what I understand, the Big Ten would love to have North Carolina, but the Big Ten's probably not going to make any moves right now until they find out what Notre Dame wants to do.
Notre Dame's going to be left out in the cold if
they don't need to be begging
careful.
them for nothing. They need to turn that around. They need to turn that button around.
And I think Notre Dame's eventually going to see, when their NBC contract is worth $15 or $20 million a year, and the new Big Ten contract is going to be worth upwards of $100 million per university.
Well, and we all know that they were able to get out there and leave that money wagon on TV. But the other conferences looked back at it and said, you know what, we're going to get that piece too.
Yeah.
It's not going to be over there in just the green and gold.
You're not going to get – the only way you're ever going to get Notre Dame in a conference is going to be if you can close off all their avenues of having a decent enough schedule to be able to play.
Well,
For a champ, if you get enough of the teams that play them traditionally into conferences where they don't have the games to spare, or they don't want to play Notre Dame as they're out of conference, Notre Dame's going to wind up being left out in the cold, not being able to field the type of schedule that would keep them in national contention.
That's right.
And they won't have any choice.
And what if they Scott determined, okay, well, it's based on winning your conference championship. Oh,
Yeah.
you don't play in one? Well, you don't get that pass.
They're not going to get a sweetheart deal like they have currently right now. If this breaks down and it's Big Ten
and that's
versus
what they
SEC,
can. And that's what they can, Scott. We might lose a ball game, but we'll still be hanging around the popularity line where everybody will ask.
As long as they can still have a pathway to get to the college football playoff, they're going to remain independent.
But we see what's happening to them when they get there.
Yeah,
They're outclassed. They don't need to be there.
yeah.
And that doesn't surprise anybody that's watched SEC football, that we know that Notre Dame's not going to come down there and win a ball game.
No, but look, they're the media darlings. They're still relevant. There's still alumni everywhere, so they're going to have the big following. But eventually, I see them going to the Big Ten. Eventually,
That
It may
mystique
be
is
2 more years down the road, but I think that's where it's headed.
that mystique is not where it once was. I mean, you think about it, 25, 30 years ago, God, it's hard to say that, when we were in high school, that mystique was still fresh.
It's been 34 years since they won.
That's what I'm saying. They were just a few years off, but I'm not even going there. I'm going to the fact that when we were in high school, we still had teachers, parents, grandparents that grew up with Notre Dame being their favorite college football team because that was the only team that they got to watch.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Yankees on Saturday.
Kind of like the Yankees, kind of like the Cowboys on Sundays, America's team. Now I can turn my television on any Saturday, well, really Thursday through Sunday at this point, and watch any number of college football teams. And so Notre Dame is not this bigger than life. Yes, there's a lot of graduates out there, but tell me how many big-time NFL players now are Notre Dame graduates. That list is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, there's still a few out there, but it's not like it used to be. And look, none of these programs have the big TV advantage anymore, really, if you think about it. It used to be, Nebraska had all these players because, hey, we're on TV every week. Well, it's not the case anymore. I can watch Coastal Carolina just about any Saturday I want to.
Well, folks, Scenic City Sports.
Name your school.
The Scenic City Sports Podcast, guys, is brought to you by our title sponsor, Gary Thacker Insurance. In addition to associate sponsors, Chattanooga Flower Market, Choo Choo Barbecue of Chickamauga, Phil's Primetime Pizza, Brandy Ann and Associates Realty, That Axe Throwing Place down in Lafayette, and the Payne Mortgage Team. These are the people that make it possible for us to bring the podcast to you guys each and every week. Don't be surprised if you hear us possibly show up in any of these places and do a live broadcast one of these upcoming weeks. But these are the people that make it possible for us to bring it to you.
And let me say something. We love and absolutely adore our sponsors because they are good people, but really we believe and hope they're in it for the same reasons we are. They want to recognize young athletes.
I can promise you that every person that we have on that sponsorship roster is exactly the way we are. I would name a couple of them right off, but I don't want to name one and not name them all.
Yeah, because I think.
But there are 2 or 3 that I can promise you will do anything they can do. It doesn't matter what it is. You call them up and say, "Hey, can I have X amount of dollars for this? Is it for kids?" Yep. Okay. Absolutely. I'll send you a check tomorrow. I mean, that's how these folks are, and that's what we appreciate about them.
I'm going to mention this real quick.
Go ahead,
Another
Scott.
Friend of the show, our good friend Buddy Gross. I think 22.6 is what he caught today.
Nice.
Up at the St. Lawrence River up in New York. He's in 26th place. Got to get in the top 10 to be able to fish. That last day.
Well, that boy knows how to
he's on his
fish
way.
because I've how many times have I given him an opportunity to tell me a secret, and he just swims away every single time. He ain't told me nothing.
He ain't gonna tell you them
He ain't
secrets,
told me
man.
one thing yet.
He ain't even going. I mean, he's going to tell you that he caught all that stuff on a Little George or something like that. He's not going to give you. He's not going to give you the skinny on what he.
He must think I'm gonna go get me a boat and get in there that same tournament
Yeah,
next
I'm
week.
telling you, man, I can't imagine fishing at the level that those guys fish at the kind of demand and just cutthroat, bam, bam, bam kind of deal that is. I just can't imagine it at that level. I mean, I've always, my dad's always enjoyed that sport. It's something that he's done for years and years and years. But at that level, that's just crazy.
Is that D Jamboree?
Let's see. Looks like it. Is that at? Yeah, I believe it is.
I believe it is too.
All right.
I think we just stumbled.
We just
on
stumbled upon the schedule for the upcoming
Preps Jamboree.
Best of Preps Jamboree.
And sometimes they throw out an early sketching of that, Scott, and have to change it.
Well,
but maybe this is legit.
This is on Facebook from the Cleveland Blue Raider Touchdown Club. It says Jamboree schedule.
They might have to redo that here
They
or there.
might, but let's hear it anyway.
$10.
Yeah, I was going to say, give us the schedule
anyways.
anyways.
Scott?
Yes, they are.
Okay, there was a success last year.
Yes, they are. So this is apparently the Jamboree schedule for the best of preps. So I'll run it down now. Like I said, don't hold us to this because this is from the Cleveland High School Blue Raider Touchdown Club.
Dun, dun, dun. This is breaking
don't-
news, folks.
I don't think
Us in a big truck somewhere telling
I
you this.
trust this. I trust this. So this schedule says we will start on Thursday, which is August 11th, 6 o'clock. It looks like they're going every 30 minutes. I see Signal Mountain versus Lookout Valley. 6:30 East Ridge versus Lookout Valley. 7 o'clock South Pitt versus Signal Mountain. 7:30 East Ridge versus Sail Creek. South Pittsburgh versus Silverdale at 8. Hickson and Sail Creek at 8:30, and Hickson versus Silverdale at 9 to end the first night. Friday, starting up at 6 o'clock again, Boyd Buchanan versus Ooltewah. Cleveland versus Ooltewah at 6:30, followed by Boyd Buchanan and McCallie. Cleveland and McCallie at 7:30. Saudi Daisy Brainerd at 8. Saudi Daisy Marion County at 8:30. Chattanooga Christian Brainerd at 9. Chattanooga Christian versus Marion County at 9:30. Saturday, the last day, this would be, I think, August 13th. 6 o'clock Central versus Tyner. 6:30 Red Bank versus Tyner. Central versus Howard at 7. Red Bank versus Blackman at 7:30.
Uh-oh.
We pulled the big boys down.
I was going to say.
The Blaze coming down from the Nashville, Murfreesboro area. 8 o'clock, Red Bank versus Blackman, 7:30. East Hamilton, Howard at 8. Baylor versus Blackman at 8:30. East Hamilton, Notre Dame at 9. And Baylor, Notre Dame to finish it out at 9:30.
Well, Todd called 615 area code and saw what was up there.
Well, think
Good
about
job.
it. When you got the asset that you have over at Boyd Buchanan now, there can be some calls made. Hey, would y'all be willing to drive down here on a Thursday night and play a couple quarters? I mean,
there was a time South Pitt and Marion didn't come to this either. They had one over at Sequatchie Valley. I guess that's I don't know what's happened to that. So, but I think we might have had South Pitt and them last year at Chattanooga.
Yeah,
I think. Now we lost Ray County a few years back, and
we got to get Football Foley on that.
they
He
haven't
can
come
get them
back yet. Well,
in
they
there
run
for
their
us.
own show, but some of the schools. I didn't hear you mention Walker Valley,
I did not see Walker Valley's name on it.
and I hear Bradley.
I didn't see Bradley's
Didn't see
name on it.
Bradley, no.
See, they've always been there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of folks out there, the powers that be, that are seeing that some of these jamborees and stuff can be big business for them on a Friday, Saturday night.
And
So
like
they
I
might
said,
be
I'm
trying to do
assuming-
some of their own.
We're assuming this is the best of prep.
I wish Georgia did the.
See how it.
I wish Georgia did the same thing. I wish we had that type of jamboree
Well,
on a
you
Thursday,
remember
Friday
Stump,
night.
Stump used to lobby for the Thursday night.
It
deal,
would be
being-
so good,
being Tennessee,
man.
Georgia. I mean, but
Well, and that's another thing, we haven't even talked about it. I mean, obviously we're excited with the football season coming up, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there right now, folks. All of you out there in podcast land, and that is this. Do not be surprised whatsoever if there are a lot of rescheduled games throughout this upcoming football season, and it won't be because of COVID or anything like that. But I could foresee we get ourselves into the same situation that we got into last year, where it's going to be, hey, listen, we don't have refs for that Friday night game. Now you play on Thursday night, We got you. Play on Saturday night. We got you.
Yeah, and guys, let me say this. You know, the two fellows that came and spoke with us, spring before last about baseball recruitment, and they addressed that night. They addressed that possibly the middle school situation is causing them to not be able to retain umpires. Mm-hmm. You know, because you got to put them there for 2 years almost, if they didn't have much insight to the sport, and how that they just are burnt out, and we start all over with that. He talked about the resolution possibly could be there is no middle school football,
right?
Yeah.
Basketball or baseball in Chattanooga. Now, a few years back, we had some folks come on Stump on Sports, and they were going to close down middle school sports due to funding.
Yeah.
This is a whole nother potential reason. But you know what? You're paying a young man, and he's getting abused about stuff, and then they just say it's not worth it.
Well, this is getting into a culture, and let's be honest, guys, that ain't going to get any better. That attitude of I can sit up here in these stands and I can say anything I want to, and I can walk down here on this fence and I can say anything I want to. If you think that attitude's going to get any better over the next few years, you're crazy, because the problem now is you got a generation of kids who were raised on online forums and being able to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah, but let me also say this too, and this goes way back, but my middle school days were...
Well, it was junior high back then.
Junior high in those days, that's right.
Junior high for me too.
Me too.
It was impactful to play that, but what's happening now is... And I was listening to them share this on the radio, that you see this group of parents that send their kids to middle school are also some of the parents that their kids are playing select sports, okay? So now it's time to be turned over to that for a moment, and that is proving grounds of just referees there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they are accustomed to maybe having a better quality umpire, referee, whatever, and now they're in this game for a few weeks, and they feel
it's different,
entitled to let you know how bad you are at it.
It's different, yeah. I mean, and it's. I wish I could tell you that, you know, officiating is bad, and I'm not saying the officiating is bad. I'm saying it's bad for officials. I wish I could just say that it's only in stick and ball sports, but it's not that way. No. It's just as bad in swim. It's just as bad in tennis. It's just as bad. I promise you, if I had guys walking out on the golf course during a golf match, it would be just as bad in golf as it is in everything else.
It's just exposed more in the other three.
It just gets back to that whole thing that we've talked about a million times. If you want people out there and you want good people out there, you're going to have to come off that money. Because I'm not going out there for $7 or $8 an hour to take the abuse.
And you know, one of them brought that up as a potential solution to their umpiring situation. They were specific more about baseball than any other sport, but you know, they didn't address what I just said. Is that those kids now they're in junior high, and some of the major schools, those kids have actually, Scott, not just went and found their glove and bat today. They've been playing. Yeah. So their parents are also accustomed to better umpiring. Right. And so now you bring them back to a game that I've said many times, 6th and 7th graders are overwhelmed by the dimensions of a baseball field.
Yeah.
Most of them, because they ain't have the arms to throw
and
across
having
the
to
field.
swing a drop 3 bat.
Yeah, so it makes for an ugly game. Now you're asking a rookie umpire who's trying his best to make both sides happy, and there's not a child out there throwing a strike all day.
Yeah. And you got stands full of parents that just spent the weekend at the East Cobb baseball facility down in Atlanta.
Seen a different story.
Where you got referees down or umpires down there
they're paying them big dollars
that get paid.
That's right. So they got
paid.
some good ones. They're not trying to break somebody in.
Nope.
Okay, so
You're
and
exactly
they
right.
may still be mouthing. Okay, but what they don't take in consideration, I believe, enough is the fact that, and even sometimes, Scott, you see middle school games a lot more than me. Sometimes even some 8th graders are still overwhelmed by the dimensions of the baseball field.
Yeah.
Because that 8th grader, when they go back to play in their summer ball, they may
there's a
still
ghost
go
in
back
this
to
studio.
54,
I think it's haunted.
54, 80, okay?
Yeah.
So, but certainly by 8th grade, some of it is catching up. But those 6th and 7th graders sometimes, particularly if they haven't grown a bit, they're just playing in a field, so to speak, that just overwhelms the game.
I wish to goodness the middle schools would drop back to the a little bit smaller dimensions.
It's facilities, Scott. They don't have them.
But they can't.
They don't
They don't
have
have
the
them. Ringo
facilities.
just created one down there for the middle school. Well,
You
they
could-
didn't make it so that it could be played on 54 feet and 70.
Right.
You could leave the. I mean, if it made it easier, you could leave the field itself where it's at. I mean, leave the fences where they are, but pull those baselines
It's the
in and pull that pitching
It's the
mound
bases in the mound.
Yeah, and I mean,
and the main thing I think that you could do to make the game better, and I'll say this. I mean, I can think of
build a 20-foot high fence all the way around the field, and not let parents in.
I can think of he even brought that up. He even brought that up. He said coaches do not have time or interest to police their fans.
No.
So they just don't get to come.
I had an area coach that told me one time, and he coached in this area for a long time. Worked with him at Sports Spectrum years ago, and he told me one time, "You want to make baseball the best sport out there?" And I said, "Sure. How do you do it?" He said, "You build a 20-foot high fence all the way around the entire field," and he said, "You put a camera in there, you record the game, and you hand out DVDs or VCR tapes." And back then it was VCR tapes, and he's like, "You hand out VCR
watch it
tapes
that way.
as the people are coming to pick their kids up."
Well,
And he said, "You never have to worry about nothing."
well, and that was one of the guys that we had on the show. I can't remember which one said that one of his resolutions was that then they just won't be any parent participation there. They just won't watch.
I've heard this somewhere, and I don't know if this is something that's been talked about around here. I can't remember where I saw it now.
But that's being brought on by themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
The ones that won't like it are the exact ones that are
gonna
doing
hate
it.
it the most. Yeah.
They said make a parent-free zone from the backstop all the way around to the end of the dugout.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And let the parents sit. Once you get past the dugout, all around the outfield's wide open. You can sit there.
Yeah, but see, the argument there is going to be, well, little Johnny's grandma she won't be able to come to the game. She's got to sit there in her fold-out chair, and I mean,
Johnny's grandma's sometimes part of the problem.
part of the problem. But you know that's going to be that, and the problem with that is you're going to, I hate to be the buzzkill here, but don't be surprised if in a situation like that, you're going to have somebody come in and call an ADA violation on something like that. Well, how can I bring my uncle in? My uncle's in a wheelchair. He can't get in any of those other areas down there to see it. He has to sit in that area right there to be able to see the game.
Well,
and they'll bust you on stuff like that.
You're going to see some zero tolerance policies, I think.
Oh, I absolutely.
And I think that's what he was alluding to.
You're exactly
That's
right.
tough politics, but it's obviously going to come to
First
because
time
we
we hear
continue
you're gone.
we continue to have
yeah.
to turn over this same set of umpires in the first 2 years for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Now you got the schools that maybe their little Johnnies have been playing good quality ball, so they feel like that they're entitled to know how that game needs to be played. But then you got some from schools that haven't been doing that, and they're the same way.
Well,
they still don't know the rules. They still don't know the strike and ball
How
situation.
many middle school baseball coaches, for the most part, how many middle school baseball coaches are high school coaches that stepped back? I mean, a lot of times middle school baseball coaches are whoever they got under the building.
Yeah, very few in today's world.
Hey, did you
Not
play
many.
baseball when you was a kid? Yeah.
No.
Hey, come here.
Not many.
Let me give you this hat. I need you to coach that team for a
That's
little
right,
while
not
until we
many.
find somebody a little
You ever
better.
brought a pack of baseball cards?
Yeah, you're
Not
good
many.
enough. You like chewing gum? All right. I mean, that it's when you get into the public school era, man, you get into that.
And speaking of
Go ahead.
I'm going to bring this up because this is one of my biggest pet peeves.
I'm here.
As far as now, younger kids, I get it. But if you're in middle school or high school and you're turned around, sticking your head out the dugout, telling mom or dad, bring me a Powerade.
Oh, yeah.
No. Bring it yourself.
Well, there's just as many.
Bring it with you to the dugout.
There's just as many
Before the
spoiled
game
rotten high
starts.
school kids doing that too.
It drives me insane.
Yeah.
If I was a coach, I was like, no.
You can't. But
You
see,
bring it with you,
but
or you get something afterwards.
but see, you're getting into.
That should be part of your uniform. You bring your bat, you
It
bring your
does,
glove,
but-
and your cap, and your cleats, and your uniform. Bring you something to drink.
But in
How
those
difficult is it?
situations, you're getting into those areas where people are going to say stuff like, "Well, that coach wouldn't even let our kids have something to drink." I mean, you're.
No, the coach has no problem getting you something to drink, but you have to bring it with you before
I
the
agree.
game starts.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's move over to talk
He
golf.
seemed very passionate about
He is
that.
very. I love it when he gets on it. When he gets on his soapbox, sometimes it's hilarious to me. So
like, how old are you?
let's talk.
Well, that's another question.
Do you yell-
22.
do you
Exactly.
yell
Yeah.
from the bedroom to, hey, Mom,
Oh,
can you
yeah.
bring me a Powerade?
The answer to that
Go
is
down there and get it
no.
yourself.
I was going to say the answer to that is yes. I mean, the answer to that is yes. So we got a little small golf tournament going on across the pond at.
This is the last of the biggies, right?
Quite possibly. I'd venture to say the most famous golf course in all the world. I mean,
We had it
Yeah.
on our top 10, didn't we?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was high on our top 10. But it is at St. Andrews in
Hallowed ground.
this. Yeah, and it's not in what town of Scotland is St. Andrews in? I don't. It's got an odd name like Perth or something like that, or I don't. I looked it up
Australia.
the other day. Yeah, Perth. It has a little small one-syllable name, I think, like that. But anyways,
Lancashire.
it is being played at St. Andrews. St. Andrews. I learned something the other day that really left an impression on me, and that is this is quite possibly the most famous golf course in the world, and they don't even know who designed it. That's how old this golf course is. They don't even have a clue who the person was that built it.
Okay, according to Google, St. Andrews Golf Club is at 8799 Edinburgh Drive in Winston, Georgia.
Really? All right then. Man, that's a shorter flight than Scotland. But
Shocking. It doesn't
you
look like North or South Georgia.
the big byline going in was, could Tiger Woods win a third Open at St. Andrews? Had he done that, he would be the only golfer to do that 3 times. Obviously there's been several players that have won the British Open several times.
St. Andrews is a town on the east coast of Fife in
5.
Scotland.
Okay, I knew it was. I knew it was something like that. But yeah, 5 Scotland.
As in Bernard.
Yeah, Bernard Fife and his silver
Bernard,
bullet.
yes.
You got to nip it. You got to nip it right now. But the thing about that golf course, and Rob brought it up. We were talking off camera, and we were talking about Tiger, and he said, didn't that play to Tiger because it's flat? And yes, that golf course is flat as a dadgum pancake in places.
Got to help him. That's
But-
what he's been struggling with, the walking around.
But when the wind is blowing 45 miles an hour in all 4 directions at some point, and you have par 5s where you hit driver 3 wood, and you still ain't there.
Well, and I said to you, he come in, he's playing 3, 4, 5 practice rounds before this. He knows what his game is. He knows what he's taking out there.
I told you before the show, I heard he's played 112 rounds of
Yeah.
golf since he's been over there.
He knows what his game
112
is.
holes.
He goes over there and
112
stays.
holes.
He goes over there and stays for like 2 or 3 weeks.
So
and they love him over there.
A front 9 or so, he might have played pretty good and said to himself, but he knows what he's taking into that.
He knows what he's got.
Have you seen the video of everybody walking up to him, like on the practice
Yeah.
range and stuff? It's
Did you see the 100? I think I'm right about this. 163 foot putt for either par or birdie.
Oh yeah.
And I think they said that was the longest one ever there. Maybe the longest one in the history of golf, Rusty. I don't know that. That's a long way. If you saw where he was, it wasn't a matter
Well,
of
you
I
have
know
to-
I can hit it there. I just hit it.
You have to understand that those, there's St. Andrews has 4 double greens, meaning that 2 different holes use the same green. It's just a ginormous green. So you could wind up leaking one, well off the back, what would normally be off the back, but you're just over on another green. You got to wait on those guys to putt to be able to come back. So you've got.
That probably creates a little stalling.
It does get into the to the timeline and stuff there. So you've got that. I'll tell you something that has stood out to me this week, and that was they got him to talk about the Live Golf Tournament or the Live Golf Tour.
I heard a little bit about it
in his press conference the other day, and I mean, he wasn't an a-hole about it. But he was pretty snippy, and I loved it. But he was classy about it at the same time, and it was like, oh. You gonna go out there and play 54 holes, huh? Okay.
Well, he talked about playing to earn.
Well, and
instead of you're just already been given
paid to play. And he went as far as when he talked about the 54 hole thing. He goes, we had U.S. Open playoffs years ago that were 36 holes. We played 72 holes a time. He really kind of dug that point home.
Well, there's stories that have come out today that some of the live golfers are getting a little ticked off because they're giving them the St. Andrews is giving them bad tee times.
Hey,
they're not letting them play with the good partners. They're playing with the guys that barely got in.
Of course, that could change a little bit if they make the cut. I'll be honest with you.
I'm about sick to death of Rory McIlroy.
Really?
I'm about.
I love me some Rory, man.
What's he done to you?
Just play golf and shut up.
Oh.
The live golfers aren't coming back.
Listen, he's no Jose Maria Olazabal, but
just play golf. Don't worry about what they're doing.
So you're feeling like he's too
too
caught up in having to tell everybody about it. I don't know if he's taking
it upon himself. Or
I think he has kind of been
the king of the PGA Tour.
I think he's been kind of anointed. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they went to the players and were like, all right, who wants to just be the a-hole? And Rory's like, right here. Give it to me, sir.
But the sarcasm in that might be if this time next year he joined it himself, and they gave him $150 million.
Well, and I mean,
that sounds pretty good.
Rory has made some serious money in his time. I tell you, I did see a real cute video of him and Tiger. I believe it was yesterday. They're on the putting green practicing before, during a practice round. And Rory's lining putts up, and Tiger's on the other side of the green just hitting BBs at Rory's feet while Rory's lining these putts up, messing with him,
Well, let me ask you this. Let's go back to NFL, USFL.
Okay.
Guys in the USFL qualified to be in the NFL, just over there. Herschel Walker comes to mind.
Yeah.
Took the money, went over there.
Yeah.
If the Live does not make it, let's just say 3, 4, 5 years, and the money just decides, well, we ain't gonna do that.
Yeah.
We can't bleed money like this.
We're tired of spending all this money.
How are they welcomed back?
Oh, I think they'll be welcome back, especially when you're talking about guys that are former major championship winners and things like that.
But there's some hard feelings going on.
There's going to be some hard feelings.
I don't think they will, because I think at this point.
But they may not have to come back for that matter.
That's what I was going to say. Dustin Johnson, DeChambeau, Koepka, all these guys are probably just going to say,
I'm going to be honest with you.
I don't need your tour anymore.
If I'm going to be honest with you. Okay. If I'm on the PGA Tour right now, of all those jackwads that left, Bryson DeChambeau would be number one on my list of, hey, bud, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I'm just never have been a fan of that guy. I'm never going to be a fan of that guy.
But they were good enough, Rusty, to be on the Ryder Cup.
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
Now this Ryder Cup's going to look, is it going to look watered down?
Yes.
Considerably.
That's a perfect way to
on American side.
For both sides.
For both sides. Yeah.
And then I heard today, they were booing Ian Poulter on the tee box today.
Well, I mean,
and then the Royal and Ancient doesn't have Greg Norman coming back. I'm like, look,
that's pissy there. I mean, that's pissy.
Who didn't have him back?
The RNA at St. Andrews. So basically, the British USG, where we have the USGA that sets all golf rules in the United States, they coordinate with the Royal and Ancient Club in St. Andrews, which is who set all the rules for Europe, and the two get together, and that's how the rule book comes out. The current rule book, I think, was 2020, I believe. There should be a new one out sometime next year.
I'm sure they have some kind of alumnus dinner
Oh, they have a
prior
champions.
to-
Yeah, they have a champions dinner, and then also if you win the British Open, you're guaranteed to play in it.
Did he ever win it?
He won it twice. Norman won it twice. He
So
won it
would,
19.
so would he be invited to those shindigs?
Well, he would have
Normally-
been. Yes, he would have been invited to the dinner. His playing exemption was up in 2005, I think,
Yeah, he hasn't
2006,
played in a while, but
something like that. But yeah, I mean, they all hell Daly's over there for the dinner in his loud mouth. His loud. I'm gonna tell you right now, if
he's
you,
wearing a shirt with a Masters logo on it.
people out there, if you are not on TikTok, I would advise you to get on there for two reasons. Number one, well, actually three reasons. Number one is a follow of these guys called Country Club Adjacent, who sit on tee boxes and try to get players to back off by telling them stuff like they look like they teach yoga in a trailer park. They, stuff like that.
Paid hecklers.
They're paid hecklers. The other one is this Hispanic fellow named Manlo Teaches Golf, which is one of the funniest things there is. And then there are several other, but John Daly is a phenomenal follow on TikTok.
Is he?
He is hilarious. He's got the big Santa Claus white beard now, and he's traveling the country in the bus.
Yeah.
And he did a deal with the Country Club Adjacent guys, and they just basically followed him around for an entire 18 holes trying to back him off of tee boxes, and he was talking just as much crap to them as they were to him, and it's hilarious.
Well, the one thing about John Daly, when you watch him play and whatever he's playing in, he's playing so loosely. He's not playing tense like if I don't make this shot. He's just playing the game, and his skill level is still very good.
Well, I mean, hell, he's had 3 heaters and 10 Diet Cokes in between each hole. So I mean,
Ready to go.
he's out there ready to rock. I mean,
I was listening to ESPN with Keyshawn and them this week, and they had Coach Spurrier on, and the main reason they had him on there was to ask him about the today's college football and NILs, and he said, well, it was originally supposed to be you come in as a freshman and you start to earn the money afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's turned out, he said, that the wealthy schools are paying you before you get there and before you've done anything for us. Now, he didn't mention those wealthy schools, but we all know
we know who
he's talking about. And they started it out, I think, a little bit with asking him about what Saban's thoughts were. But he kind of sided with Saban in the standpoint of the line wasn't drawn, Scott, as well as it should have been, because if that was the story, okay, you come in here, we recruit you to a scholarship, and after your freshman year, you start earning this NIL money.
Yeah.
Not while you're walking the hallways of your high school and you haven't done a thing for any of us that we're going to pay you a bunch of money.
And you know whose fault that is? The NCAA.
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
Because they had every opportunity. The schools even asked them, said, hey, give us some guidance on this NIL deal. Let us know what we're supposed to be doing, what we can do, what we can't do. And they hem-hawed around, and they finally just said, it's up to you guys. You guys do what you need to do and what you have to do, because they didn't want to get involved with it.
Well, they're notorious for making bad decisions,
And
even when they give it to somebody else to make the decision.
And as I have said, the toothpaste is now out of the tube, and there's no way to get it back in. And now we've got some athletic directors and university presidents screaming that the NCAA needs to control this. Well, guess what? It's too late now.
Yeah.
If they tried to do it now, if they tried to come on and say, look, these are the guidelines, you know what's going to happen? The schools are going to laugh at them and throw the piece of paper away, and that'll be it.
And let's just say,
Or they'll break away.
just say the schools, and even they were well-known schools, and they could recruit top-notch athletes. Let's just say that they had the pretense of playing it just that way, but yet the team that's still in their conference down the road isn't playing like that at all. So that just kind of whitewashes what that team can do, because they cannot get behind the 8 ball on 5-star and 4-star athletes, because we're playing by the rules that it was intended to, but that's not the rules.
And I know a bunch of people are upset by it. It's ruined college football, that and the transfer portal. Yeah, it might. But you know what? This is what it is.
Then you adapt.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so sick of, well, it ruined this and it ruined that. You know what?
The forward pass was supposed to ruin
The
college
forward
football.
pass was going to ruin college football. I mean,
Tearaway jerseys.
Tearaway jersey. I mean,
Let
you
the
know,
freshmen play.
if you count up the number of things over the years that was going to ruin individual sports, baseball, for instance, comes to mind with the you know, how many times have they juiced the ball? They've deadened the ball. They've done everything. Athletes evolve, the game evolves, and it stays exactly where, you know, in 5 years from now, they'll be bitching about something else.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all caught this on Sunday Night Baseball. Just A-Rod and his associate do things similar on ESPN2 that the Mannings did, breaking down baseball with guests. And I thought they had an interesting guest on there the other night. Not that they don't always. They had Clemens on there, and they were talking about, and A-Rod, if you listen to A-Rod, he's really, really bright when he's talking about baseball. I know he got caught up in taking stuff, but he's really bright when he's talking about baseball. And Clemens was sharing that he called his own game and how he called his own game based on where his eyes were looking. That's what the catcher knew that I was throwing. Where he tilted his glove one way or the other is what it was. He said, now every now and then some teams called on to me and I had to change what I was doing, but he said I called the game, and that's how I called the game.
Wow. That's interesting.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Well, I mean, that's one.
And again, I know you're like this way, Scott, too. The guys that are being left out of the Hall of Fame is a tragedy.
Because they deserve to
Because
be there.
you're leaving out amazing numbers, and I want you to get off your high horse that you talked to the first guy that ever recorded a baseball game, and he understands this is where y'all got to be.
Because Stutz Terkel told you that
you know, these guys that are, when you got your all-time hits leader, all-time home runs, you've got multiple Cy Young winners, you've got guys that are hit over 500 home runs, and then you're putting people in that hit half that.
It is no different. It is no different than how many really good rock bands have been held out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because the guy at Rolling Stone didn't like their catalog of music.
Okay, yeah,
I
good
love
example.
the argument.
I mean,
the record book is tainted. Well, I got news for you.
Record book's been tainted
Let's
for a
go
long
back
time.
130 more years.
Yeah.
There was a dead ball era. There was a live ball era. There was a lower the mound era. There was a raise the mound era. There was an era where only white people could play.
We're gonna play
There
in the
was a
daytime.
steroid era. It
Yeah.
has not been a level playing field.
It's
in
always
baseball
had an adjustment, and what
since there was an 18.
And we're going to hold guys out when we got guys in there that we know basically were murderers. We got guys in there that you know, got busted betting on games.
Well, and again, Pete Rose did all his that they caught up with and can document. He did it as a manager. He didn't do it as the hits leader.
He's still the.
He didn't do it that way. So how do you have the guy that's got 4,400 and some odd hits, Scott, but no, his name ain't mentioned?
The best
here.
pure hitter probably that's ever. I mean, literally one of the best.
I thought that was interesting. What one of you put up about Tony Gwynn.
I put that up
and
the other
Tony
day.
Gwynn was
If
ridiculous.
you didn't see
he was
if you
ridiculous.
didn't see the little thing, it's on our Sink City Sports Facebook page. Tony Gwynn in his career had 45 games with 4 or more hits.
Yeah.
He had 34 games with 2 or more strikeouts.
Yeah.
He's just hard to get out.
I mean, in like I was talking to, we went down Monday night, went down to the Braves game, watched the Braves and the Mets. Scherzer against Free, you know, Braves didn't really show up that night, but we went down there for the game, and we bought standing room only tickets. Wound up standing behind Gary Thacker, our primary sponsor, and his crew, and hung out with them.
That's on the third shelf.
And I was sitting there talking to Gary, and you know, we were just getting into all of the particulars of some of it, and it's
You know, I didn't know that this so standing room only down there.
yeah. Oh
But
Lord,
but
yeah.
in, but
You
in some of
stand
those
anywhere.
spots you can see good.
Oh my God, we had 2 or 3 spots where we
say
were
what?
seeing, you know, just as well. But we were talking about the stat of Tony Gwynn against Greg Maddux. You know, the one it's like 300 and something total at bats, and Maddux only got him out like 21 times or something stupid like. I mean, some just crazy off the wall. But
And Tony Gwynn has spoken in the past about, I could have hit more home runs, but I would have surrendered my batting average. And in today's world, Scott, they were willing to surrender the batting average for the potential long ball.
Yeah, that's the way the game is played.
And I don't know if you ever pay much attention to Albies at second base. He swings out of his shoes every pitch that's thrown at him. Every pitch. The young man can hit 310, but he's not going to hit 310. Yeah. I'm going to hit 240 so that I can hit 25 home runs. Yeah. And the Braves seem to be okay with that.
And that's where the big money contracts
are. That's where they're okay.
Because, I mean, back in the 80s when Tony Gwynn was playing, and, I mean, you had a leadoff guy, and he got on base, and then he stole second, or you found a way to move him over, and you played small ball.
I said that to Coach Payne once, and I said, explain to me why the game is played a certain way, Coach, until we get to the major leagues, and then when we say the hell with it. You do never see a major league manager ask somebody to sacrifice a runner up by bunting. Well, it's like he would get fired for doing that.
Yesterday, I was at the Braves game yesterday,
and yet we go 5 or 6 extra innings because we hadn't done any of that.
6 home runs were hit between the two teams
yesterday.
1 stolen base.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go back to I look at it like this.
Ricky Henderson's record's good forever. He can't be. He'll never.
Listen.
That's the unbreakable record.
Ricky could steal some bases now. Ricky could steal some bases.
But nobody's trying to get his record either.
Well,
Cy Young's win total.
Oh yeah.
Ryan's
strikeout.
Some of those things are
my issue with modern baseball, bigger than anything, and to me, I think all of the other problems branch off of this, is that I don't know that Greg Maddux would crack a roster nowadays, because
velocity.
The first thing they're going to look at is they're going to go,
you don't throw
well, I mean,
hard.
Just throws 86.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Where are we going to use him?
He could get up in the mid,
but he didn't pitch
mid-90s if
he didn't pitch that way.
But he didn't pitch that way.
I just saw something on Facebook on the way over here. Greg Maddux, and I think it was against the Cubs in Chicago one year, threw a complete game on 78 pitches.
I watched him.
Complete game. Yesterday at that game, both pitchers were around 80-85 pitches by the 5th inning.
I watched him throw a complete game. Yeah. I watched him throw a complete game against the Pirates one night in Atlanta on 88 pitches, and the entire game lasted like an hour and 47 minutes.
But when they go back to his highlights, he's still fun to watch.
Oh.
He's still fun to watch him take a ball that's going to look like it's going to be 4 inches off the plate, and then it's catching
But see,
the corner.
that's what I'm getting at, though. Every pitcher nowadays out there has a 90-plus mile per hour fastball,
95,
and they maybe throw 2 pitches. They got a fastball and they got a slider. Most of them, if they're lefty, they're going to have most of the time they're going to have a curveball. You don't have a lot of pitchers that go out there and live and die by the off-speed stuff. You don't have Glavine. You don't have Maddux.
Well,
you don't have Charlie Lieber. You don't have the old codger out there throwing knuckleballs. I mean, you just...
And I miss Glavine's expertise and talk about pitching this year. He's got some family issues he's dealing with, and I hope he comes back to the booth, because he talks about every pitch being maximum effort, and that's why you don't see guys that can go complete games anymore.
That's why they don't last
5 innings and they got to go
6 or 7 years.
Now let me ask you this: because they're talking about possibly robotic umpires coming into the league in the next couple years, you think Greg Max be throwing 78 pitch perfect complete games with robotic umpires?
No, he
when
wouldn't
he was
have.
Getting 6 inches on either side of the plate.
Glavine was. I mean, there were a lot of pitchers during that era.
And I don't begrudge them doing that, because
no.
that was the way it was umpired. Hey, if you were around the plate, they were going to give it to you because the umpires knew.
What's the lefty in New York back then? Pettit got calls like that.
They all did.
David Cohn got calls like that.
You show them.
You show me you can hit the target, and I'm gonna give you that benefit of the doubt if you show me that you can hit the target.
Yeah.
And these hitters now, man, they don't worry about off-speed stuff because they don't see a whole lot of it.
But you know what?
They don't have to worry.
But as a hitter, I hate to see at bats taken away from those type of strikes. Not calling ball strikes and the guy walking back to the dugout going, hell, I couldn't have reached that with another 4 inches on this bat.
And I want to know if they do bring in these robotic.
I could have hit that with a broomstick.
I want to know if they do bring in these robotic umpires. Is it going to be adjustable for a taller player as opposed to a shorter player?
I just want to know if when the head coach kicks dirt on it, does it get in the works and gum it all up and it falls over?
And here's another thing that you don't see very, very often. Maybe more so. A strike used to be at the letters, but now that strike is rarely ever called up that high.
Yeah.
And you see players get mad when it does get called because it only gets called every now and then. So they get mad that you called that a strike. You ain't called that a strike this week. So, but now I get to be the guy that you did that of.
Yeah.
All right. So one last thing. We hadn't really talked a lot of NFL, and then we will kind of as we move into football season, we'll bring up some more. But I wanted to just talk about one small thing, and I don't want to get into all the charges and all the crap with Deshaun Watson, but at the same time, Baker Mayfield right now has got to be feeling like, told you what was going to happen.
He was done
literally
so
we were
wrong.
watching draft day. Pre-draft.
And I caught them. I caught him and the owner and his wife on TV the other day in an interview, and how they worked their way into the NFL and how much money they had sponsored UT with, and we know all that. But they talked about that contract. But yeah, Baker he definitely needed to get traded somehow, because he couldn't walk back in there with his attitudes, so to speak.
How you gonna walk back onto a team that don't?
And I'm gonna help you win 8 games.
You didn't want me 6 months ago.
Yeah,
you didn't want me at all.
Had a bad shoulder, tried to play through injury because they didn't have anybody else.
Yeah.
That kid gave everything that he had to that organization and that team. They drafted him because that's the kind of player he was.
Yep.
And he went up there and became that type of player again for the Browns, and then it wasn't good enough.
Well, because that's the Browns. That's your boy Haslam, man.
I do not shop at Pilot Truck Stop.
Yeah, that's Haslam. Haslam's the modern day Jerry Jones. I want something shiny. Give me the name. I want something shiny. And you got to look
That's
at
the
Baker.
second or third time he's acted like he's got a grudge against something tonight.
Well,
now it's a gas station.
Hey, Scott's got a lot of grudges. I've known him for a lot of years. Don't even get him started on stuff like REM and the Braves and things like that. But
I saw something the other day. I don't hold grudges. I just remember the facts.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you look at. I was listening to the Dan Patrick show this morning, and Dan was talking about the Baker Mayfield situation. And Wade brought it up. He said, you look at Baker. He said Baker, was a walk-on at Texas Tech. He winds up getting to Oklahoma. He plays well at Oklahoma. He was still a kid. He acted like a kid. He did dumb kid things that year against Georgia in the semifinals. The stuff that he did. But when he got to the NFL and he finally made it and made his dream come true, he sort of drew that line in the sand and was like, you know what, I'm going to grow up now. I'm going to do what I need to be. I'm going to be the guy that this team needs. And like you said, he became exactly what they needed him to become. And now they've just pissed on him.
Well, it's in any sport or any profession, Rusty, it's tough to get somebody that tends to wear their emotions on their sleeve not to be that way under a stressful situation.
Right.
So he's being criticized by a lot of folks being immature, but that's kind of his personality. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he's mad about how you've treated him.
But
And I don't blame him for that.
You're going to call him immature, but you're going to bring in a guy
That may not play for you.
that is literally the epitome of a sleazeball, allegedly.
Allegedly.
And you're going to get on to him because he likes to win. It's like, again, I hate to always quote Dan, but a lot of us grew up at the altar of Dan and Keith. Dan always says that if he were a person in an NFL team, if he were the GM or he was someone in the front office, that his interview process would literally be one question. And that one question is, do you love football? And there's a whole lot of guys in the NFL that don't love football.
Mm-hmm.
It's their job.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield is not one of those guys. You can look at that guy and tell he eats, sleeps, and breathes
Yeah.
every minute of it.
Here's
Roethlisberger was a guy like that. I mean,
here's the situation. He's going to a bad football team. And he's going to be judged on can you get us some wins? The coach is on the hot seat already. They've tried another quarterback last year in Darnold. That didn't fly. So he's going to be under pressure himself to bail the coach out. And we've seen this before in the NFL. That usually don't work.
No.
You usually can't flip the switch
And
in a
he'll
year.
wind up with a new coach that don't want him. He'll be right back in the same situation in a year from now, 2 years from now.
I mean, because
feel bad for him.
everybody will be blamed
Yep.
when it don't work.
And hadn't he just signed a big? Didn't they just?
They owe him about $19 million.
I was about to
think.
say, didn't he
signed a pretty
just
big
sign
deal.
a big deal like
His
second contract?
And they still have to pay. The Browns still have to honor that, I think.
Well, I mean, I'd enjoy spending that money. I mean,
And speaking of big money contracts with quarterbacks, have you seen the new Patrick Mahomes commercial?
no.
It's for the Coors Light. Now, here's the thing. NFL players are not allowed to do beer commercials anymore.
Yeah.
They've stopped that in 2019. So he's doing the Coors Light. It's a flashlight.
All right, that's genius.
It's a flashlight.
That is
and they're
genius.
actually making these things, and the money's going to the Patrick Mahomes Foundation. If you haven't seen it, pull it up on YouTube or wherever.
I'll
you
have to
put
check
it
that out.
And look up the Coors Light with Patrick Mahomes commercial. It just came out like yesterday or today or something like that. It is brilliant.
Is there
It is absolutely brilliant.
Is there a more likable quarterback in the NFL with a less likable brother and wife than Patrick Mahomes? Because that dude is like the dude that everybody would just want to go hang out with, and his wife and brother are the people that you just want to punch in the throat.
Nobody else comes to mind.
I mean, I'll tell you who's commercial.
Back
that
in
I
the
really,
day, which quarterback would you have liked to hung out with? One pops in my head.
Favre would have been a lot of fun.
I'm going to take you back further than that.
Bradshaw would have been a lot of fun too.
A very good one there. Joe Willie.
Oh my God.
That one might be the best.
Joe Willie's B team would be everybody else's starters. I mean, it's,
Yeah. But you did mention some good ones. But Joe Willie would probably be hard to beat.
I'm thinking of Lynn Dawson smoking a cigarette and
Drinking a Fresca.
Drinking a Fresca at halftime of the Super Bowl.
You know that now therein lies a question. You know, if you could take one athlete from any sport from any era and go out for a night, who would you want to go out? I mean, like, now there's your list, the all sports party list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, you think about it. I mean, I'm thinking right off the top of my head: Mick, Whitey, Billy Martin,
Ruth.
Babe. You got Satchel Paige.
Be careful with Lawrence Taylor.
You got Lawrence Taylor.
You might not get home.
Ruth was nothing but a fat man with little girl legs.
Dennis Rodman.
Rodman might get you in trouble.
The old Seinfeld line.
I mean, you know, I'm just thinking, you know, the all party team, Gronk.
Yeah, well, Gronk's on Mount Rushmore. That.
Oh my God. Oh, I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking. I mean, Favre.
At least the modern day one.
But see, Favre would be a tale of two eras. I mean, if you got him in that Atlanta era, I don't know that you could have hung with him. You got him in that Green Bay era once he kind of went through some stuff. It might not have been as bad, but
jorts on draft day. I mean,
you know, but you think about some of those dudes from back in the day. I mean, like Satchel Paige. I mean, Lord, he had a woman in every town. You know, I mean,
Lyle Alzado.
yeah, that's another good.
How about some of them Raiders of their?
Problem with hanging out with those guys, you're probably going to eat a knuckle before the night's over. You know, you're going to wind up in a fight.
Well,
at least you got those guys backing you up. But I mean,
and here's a couple of them: Butkus and Ditka.
Zonka.
I told you about a policyholder I had once that had 220-pound Rottweilers that roamed the yard, and their names were Butkus and Zonka.
Butkus and Zonka. You know that.
Butkus and Zonka or Butkus and Ditka?
No, Butkus and Zonka.
And Zonka.
Well,
that's two of the meanest human beings.
These
that
two
ever
dogs
walked
did
in the
not
NFL.
let you walk in the yard. Trust me.
You know, that's the the NFL all badass team. Those two guys would definitely be in the top 2 or 3. And then you got old
Ray Nitschke.
Chuck Bednarik.
Oh, Concrete Charlie.
I mean, to me, they don't get much. You know, that dude right there. Who was it?
That picture of him knocking out Frank Gifford.
I was listening to something the other day, and I'm trying to remember who it was they were talking about. They were talking to a player, and they were asking him, did he ever charge the mound? And he said no. He goes, I never charged the mound a day in my life. And he said, what kind of good's it going to do to charge the mound? He goes, I just waited till the game was over with and waited outside their locker room.
Oh, Bull Durham.
And he said, he said once they come out of the locker room, he said, I just kicked the crap out of them out there in the hallway.
Yeah,
He's
they
like,
shared locker rooms.
I ain't going to the mound.
It's like slap shot when the police show up in the locker room. The Hansons.
Well, guys, we've gone over quite a bit. I mean, obviously, this is a way more laid back and fun format for us because we're just sitting here having a conversation, and you folks get to listen in on it. These are the kind of things that we do all the time. But
let us know what exit you're on.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us what type of truck that you're driving right now, and exactly what you're hauling. And I mean, is it a reefer? Is it a regular truck? We're curious,
Yeah.
But you guys, we've had a ball bringing the show to you tonight. We'll see you guys next week, probably around Tuesday or Wednesday. We will have a special guest on with us next week, and that guest is none other than Chickamauga's own Corey, the Buttercream Dream Forrester.
Funny guy.
Is going to come on
a funny guy.
Just have a good time with us and tell some jokes. And big sports fan Corey is, and I guarantee you that we'll probably talk some professional wrestling that night because Corey is good friends with Conrad Thompson, son-in-law to none other than the Nature Boy Ric Flair himself.
Oh, all right.
And real quick, new AEW tag team.
Yeah,
did not see that coming.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I
didn't see that coming.
I rewound the footage about 4 times this morning to show my daughter.
The front
Keith
flip.
Lee coming over the top rope. If that don't look like a damn refrigerator coming through the air and falling on top of you.
He's 380, and he dove over the top rope.
He moves like a man half his size.
Did a front flip over the top rope, took out 3 guys on the outside.
Well, and I have a source, and I don't even consider it a good source, but she did do some research and saw this. My wife said that in reading that Naomi and Sasha Banks recently walked out of the match and are in a little bit of hot water.
Yes.
Well, I've heard there's some negotiation going on. I'd heard Sasha's trying to negotiate herself out of the company.
Well,
Naomi is
they'll
not.
run you out doing that. I mean, they ain't got any one person.
She wants out, from what I understand. But I've also read recently that there's about to be big time trimming of the fat at AEW. There's a whole list.
There's a lot of people in that roster.
Well, they've brought in a lot, and
some of it has a hard time getting seen nowadays because they got a lot of it.
They have been for 3 weeks running now. They have been the #1 Wednesday night program on all of cable television. Mm-hmm. So say what you want. They have obviously been doing something right. So, folks, we love you. We'll talk to you next week. You guys all take it easy. The views and opinions expressed on this show are those of its hosts and owners and in no way represent the views of the people, institutions, or organizations that Scenic City Sports is involved with in a professional or personal capacity. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
We're going to get to see Trout and Ohtani play.
Yeah.
Well, the days are short and the nights are long. A room slowly fills with song. All I need is one reminder. Part ways, blue blinded. Well, I begged and cheated and I borrowed for my life upon the road. I'm still looking for some gold at the end of my rainbow. Yes, someday I will find her on a parkway, blue blinder. Someday I will find her. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade on the parkway on an autumn day. Yes, and leaves fall like confetti in a New York parade. Circles in a square. Yes, and some